One of my particular problems was patience. I've only had 6, you had 10, 12. How did you manage to be patient with all that activity?
Well, I think that is a necessary thing, to be patient with your children. Unfortunately, I haven't always been that way, and I've lost my patience. My wife is much better, I think, much more patient than I am. But it's something that the parent, of course, must learn, and we also have to treat children as children and not as miniature adults. I think that's another thing that we have to learn about. And and also respect the differences of the children, because some children obey much more promptly than others, and what works with one child won't work with another. But you just have to remember that these children are not pets or toys that you have, but they're little persons, equal in dignity to you as a person, and that they have a tremendous gift, and that they're intelligent, and that they are going to learn how to make their own free choices, and you have to help them do this in a proper way. And this will require a lot of patience. So, and I think another important thing, though, is to have prayer. I think it's very important in raising a family to remember that God is the one who gives you your children, and that He will also give you the ability to care for them and raise them properly if you have faith and confidence in God.
In our case, I found that with my wife, who had the patience of Job, and resentment, I just didn't have it.
I was thinking the first child or two really made large demands on me. You know, I had to read, I had to play, but as they began to come along, they would amuse themselves, and so less and less was on me. Of course, I had to be there, but I was relieved, really, of entertaining the child or keeping the child absorbed in something. So I would say the demands on my patients were less because they were amusing themselves generally. And I think that's the secret of a big family that people don't generally realize.
One of having such large families, I suppose one of the biggest problems is the question I would like to ask. How can you afford a large family? How did you manage economically to take care of all your expenses?
Well, we were fortunate to be in the Washington, D.C. area where the Smithsonian and so many things are free to the public. And I think in a way they were educational, too, for our children, because that was where we would go, to the free concerts or to the museums. And they grew up doing those things. As for food, you learn how to buy in bulk and cook like an army sergeant and all of that. And clothing, people are very generous. And the hand-me-down system, you know, that goes through the family. So it does work out.
Irene, did you have any economic problems? Or?
Actually, we were always on a shoestring budget. But I think our main secret of making it go was that we never budgeted.
Never budgeted?
Never budgeted. We never held a budget as such. Praying, yes, a lot. We did a lot of praying, and that pulled us through all kinds of situations, not only financial. But also, we sort of set priorities. I think as a family, you need to consciously or subconsciously find out what is your thing. And our thing as a family was education and music. So we really went into that all the way. And whatever else, it was great. My husband got paid once a month, and it was nice the first 2 weeks. And then if we had hot dogs, it didn't matter. And we didn't have TV at all. I guess we could have afforded it, but we never even thought about it. There were many things we did without that maybe families feel they need. And we did super without him. And I think that helped us along.
The next question.
Well, if I could put in something on it, I think in a certain sense, perhaps we were lucky in our generation, because I certainly think this is true. When I moved to the Washington area, it was in 1969, and I thought prices here were atrocious at that time. But we were extremely fortunate that we came here when we did and bought a home that was adequate, which I couldn't afford today, or certainly couldn't afford later on. And I think one of the great tragedies today is the economic situation for young people who are getting married. My 2 oldest children are married. one a boy and another girl, but fortunately they're both doctors who have good income potential, so they're in pretty good shape for that. But for many others, I think it's extremely difficult, and it's also what drives many people for having both parents working. I think very often today women would prefer not to work outside the home, but because of financial necessity, they're forced to do so. So I think this is a serious problem in our society, and I also think the tax laws are very bad, punishing people with large families. Even as our children were growing up, I don't think we got enough for the exemptions for children. My salary was quite low for many, many years. In fact, it's only recently that I've been getting what I consider decent pay. I worked at 2 or 3 jobs for many years to help support them. As a matter of fact, I was out of a job for 8 months in 1971 before I began teaching at Catholic University. And I was very fortunate, I thank God, for the food stamp program, as a matter of fact, and other things, but I kept hope. But I think it's much more difficult today, and I really think that's one of the most serious problems, and I think a terrible injustice to young people today, because it's much more difficult for young couples getting married to find a decent, adequate housing, particularly in areas like Washington, D.C., unless they are making a great job of money. It's an extreme, and I think this is one of the most serious injustices in our society at the present time.
I would like to make a statement and ask you a question in regards to how you supported such a large family. My experience was that each time we had a child, I was able to get a promotion or in-grade assignment.
You were fortunate.
So God took care of me, and I was just wondering if you had any experience with God.
Well, you were fortunate in that way. I do believe, I am a firm believer in divine providence, but certainly it doesn't always work out that way. For example, when my wife became pregnant with our last child, our 7th child, that was when I was informed that my job was terminating, okay? And then I went out. I was then out of a job for 8 months, and it's fortunate that I got a fairly decent severance pay from the company I'd been working for, but it's also a benefit that my own father was able to provide us with some kind of assistance, and not everybody does. And as I said, the food stamp program was necessary for that time. And then the job that I ultimately took after that actually paid me much less, but I took it. One of the primary benefits of it was teaching at Catholic University, and one of the fringe benefits would be that the children could go there tuition-free for college. Not all chose to do that, but that was a remarkable fringe benefit, even though the salary was low. But I think it is very difficult, and I was fortunate, and I think that God does provide, but I also believe, and I would like that it's really, in my judgment, the tax laws of this country are very bad. For example, a couple that would be, both of them working, would put their child, maybe with one child, and put the child into a daycare center. They can get a tax credit, which was a very good benefit, a tax credit on a great amount of the money that they pay, whereas the mother who stays home and takes care of her child, there's no credit of that kind given the benefit. I think that society, this is something that the Pope has mentioned, that society must be structured in such a way that the immense contribution that women who stay home and take care of their children and contribute to the family, the immense contribution that they make to society must be recognized, and I don't believe that is in our country or in our society.
Did you experience any interception by God in...
Yes, we did a lot of it. Of course, we ask for it. I think sometimes one forgets. One thinks that they have to do it with their own skills and their own ingenuity. And we always ask. That was the first thing we did, was to ask the Lord. And I think there's no way he will refuse that kind of help. But, for instance, we were on our 7th child, I think, and we had no medical benefits. And then my husband got the position. Oh, well, as a matter of fact, he was teaching at the University of Dallas, and they had no maternity benefits. And just as I got pregnant with my 7th, they installed that in their plan. So that was a very obvious, I mean, it wasn't probably for us, but it sure was a big help. And our families, I think both my husband and my families, they helped out with maybe supporting the musical school for one child or something, their music lessons. So I think that if families could stay together and help each other out, that's one other way of handling it.